The decision to have an emergency was not one that could be taken lightly or easily, but there comes a time in the life of a nation when hard decisions have to be taken. When there is an atmosphere of violence and of indiscipline, and one can visibly see the nation going down, then the time has come to stop this process. Some people say that our measures were too drastic. They point out from person to person and ask which person was endangering the future of the country. The question is not one of personalities. But if you study what has been happening in the last 4 years, you will find there has been a steady increase of violence, of indiscipline, and of crime. It does not mean that the leaders or the others were wanting crime, but somehow the shelter they gave to all kinds of groups and individuals and the call to revolt led to this permissiveness. Perhaps each one of these things by itself was not so serious, although the call to the army, the police, and the industrial workers to revolt was serious enough. Even then, I would say that each thing by itself perhaps would not have landed us into trouble, but it was gradually weakening the very fiber of national life. Some members of the opposition have rightly blamed us, saying us we should have taken some action earlier. I do admit that I had taken action earlier, it would have been less drastic action. But somehow I thought here are responsible people. Here are people who have been our colleagues, and whatever they may say today, they will stop and they will feel that a limit has been reached beyond which no party and no individual can go in any system, especially in a democracy. The other systems, of course, do not allow it at all. Suddenly, we find that there was no such limit, that people who wanted very radical measures were willing to join with those who were extremely conservative and hold views on foreign policy and everything else were entirely different. In that process, every section of the population seemed to be losing its moorings. You have only to look at the newspapers. An atmosphere of falsehood, an atmosphere of calumny was being spread and it was having its effect amongst the people. I do not think that anyone could sit seriously and say that in that situation, as it was developing, anything positive could be done. Some people ask why we did not implement the economic program before. Who stopped us? I shall not say that any person stopped us or any group stopped us, but the atmosphere did stop us. Amongst industrial workers, there was a tendency to go on strike to make demands. The employers on their side also felt that they could take advantage of the situation and they did take advantage. Whether it was the traders, the farmers, or any other section of the people, they felt that this was the time when they could get something for themselves regardless of the effect on the nation. The administration also became weak, as it was bound to when people are trying to get files out of offices, trying to get all information true or false. So it was this deterioration in the whole national life which was a threat not only to our democracy, although that is great enough, but I think that was a threat to our very survival as a nation. It did threaten our unit. Shelter was given to parties which did not interpret unit of integrity in the manner that we had done all those years as the founders of this democracy had envisaged. This was a big danger, and the question was whether one should allow this deterioration to go on or put a stop to it. It is very difficult to measure how drastic a step is or should be. Perhaps we also were led away by the newspapers because they made so much of hue and cry. Now everybody says that the agitation was small, but at that time the opposition did not say that it was small. They said that the entire nation was up in arms, that the entire nation was behind those agitations. This was the picture that was painted by the newspapers, a picture of distortion, of misrepresentation, not all the papers but a section of them. That was the picture of India that was built or was being shown in many newspapers abroad. There is poverty in almost every country of Asia and Africa, and even in some countries which are not on these continents. Yet only India's name was always bracketed with starving. Anything that India did was wrong, whether it was in the field of science, whether we won a war, or whatever we did. If India did it, it was wrong, and if another country did it, it was right. If we have a peaceful experiment, the whole world comes down on us. When other countries explode a bomb, nobody says a word about it. This was also the atmosphere within the country. Anything that the government did was wrong, and anybody who opposed the government was right. If the opposition members said that the battle would be taken on to the streets, there was no comment on it. Had any one of us said it, what a tremendous hue and cry would have been raised. If anybody from our side had said that we should not cooperate with the government in Tamil Nadu or the government in Goa or some other place, what noise there would have been. But when the opposition said something openly and again, nobody seemed to take any notice of it. Now I am told that some newspapers say that they did protest. It may be that in passing they might have said something, but there was no noticeable disapproval that this sort of call to disruption should have evoked. We now find Marxists being called the greatest democrats in India. We find RSS being called a truly nationalist organization. Now there are contradictions in terms. Everybody knows the sort of government that Marxists have had. It is known all over the world.